All right. And I will kick us off officially by introducing myself. So I'm Flannery Winchester, CCL's Communications Director. And I think actually we have a small enough group that we could go around and do individual introductions if folks just want to tell us, say your name and what chapter you're calling from, chapter and state maybe. So I see Joe and then David and then let's go to Carl and then I'll call on more people.
Hi, this is Joe Garfunkel. I'm the group leader, chapter leader in Houston, Texas, also the media lever leader.
This is David Tomford. I'm the media lead from the virtual Tennessee chapter.
Oh, wonderful.
And Carl Dans, Silicon Valley North, and I'm kind of sneaking in because it's my wife, Paula, that is the media lead, but my role is liaison to Congresswoman Anna Eshoo.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks for being here. And then I see Robert, Mark, and Karen.
Is that this Robert? Rob Haw.
Roberts and multiple Joes, maybe. Sorry, it's Robert Hall.
Founder of the Pasadena Foothills chapter, and now I'm the media liaison. And that's, well, Pasadena Foothills is in Pasadena, California.
All right, thanks for being here. Oh, Mark, you're still muted.
Sorry, I'm Mark Welsh, media person here in Omaha, Nebraska, Nebraska District 2. And I'm going to hide myself because I'm eating.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for being here. Oh, Karen, you're muted too. Karen, can you unmute?
There we go. So I'm Karen Jackson. I am the print media manager in Salt Lake City, Utah, along with Margie McCloy.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for being here. And then next on my screen, I see Paula and John and Barbara.
Okay, this is Paula Dans. Hi, I'm the print media lead for Silicon Valley North chapter here, and I live in Los Altos.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And John, we're just doing quick introductions of your name and the chapter you're calling in from.
Right. John Picaro, the Pioneer Valley chapter in Massachusetts, District 2. I'm the media coordinator.
All right, great. Barbara, you want to introduce yourself? Oh, Barbara might be frozen. All right, we'll come back to Barbara. And then I see Mary and David. David?
Hi, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, the Research Triangle Park chapter.
All right, and then we'll finish up with Don, and then Joe, Tadino, and Christy.
Hi, my name is Don Mino. I'm out of the Kirkland, Washington chapter.
Hi, everybody. This is Joe Tadino. I am with the Chicago North Side chapter.
All right, and Christy?
I'm in the Bellevue chapter in Washington State. I'm letters to the editor liaison.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I'm excited that we have so many folks who are specifically focused on media. So I'm glad to know that that you're out there with this focus in your chapters. So so thank you for being here tonight, so that we can all we can support you in your efforts. So tonight on this call, I'm planning to give you a quick overview of the current political context and the current media opportunities that are available to you. And then we'll reserve most of the time for open Q&A so that we can help you with those media activities. But first, I wanted to briefly introduce the other CCL communications staffers on the call with us tonight. So first, I'll kick it over to Steve Valk. Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Steve Valk. I'm the communications coordinator, soon to be the strategic communications specialist, because we're going to have somebody who's going to be the the communications coordinator coming on in about a week or so. So, but I've been here on staff with CCL since 2009.
Awesome. And then our newest communications staffer, our state and local media coordinator, is Charlotte Ward. I am thrilled to introduce you to her. Some of you know her already on this call, but Charlotte, do you want to say hi and a little bit about your background with CCL and your professional work as well?
Sure. Thank you, Flannery. Yes, so I'm Charlotte Ward. I've been working with Flannery and Steve for about, coming up to a month. And I have been a volunteer with CCL for 5 years, and I am a group leader in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm pretty much the state coordinator for media in South Carolina. And my background is as a journalist, so I've spent about 20 years writing for different publications and doing all kinds of different journalism and kind of writing stuff for different companies. So I'm really thrilled to be kind of merging my passion for climate change advocacy with my day job. So it's awesome. I'm really happy to meet you all.
Yes, I will second that. It is awesome. I am so thrilled that you're here. And I'll just brag on you a little bit. Charlotte has jumped right in, everybody, with, developing media resources for you to use and LTE opportunities and all this stuff. So you can know that the resources that are coming your way are from her expert hands, and you're in good hands with her supporting you. So welcome, Charlotte. And actually, if you just want to drop your email address in the chat just to make sure everybody has it in case you don't already. Okay, so before we open it up for Q&A, I want to talk you guys all through sort of what's happening right now, because there's a lot going on, and I know that there's a lot to try to keep up with, and it feels like Congress is both moving slow and going 100 miles an hour, and it's there's just a lot. So I'll try to break it down for you. Basically, Congress is working on the budget right now. So when you're hearing news about budget resolutions or votes on budget resolutions or committee instructions, all of that is related to what's called the budget reconciliation process. Congress is basically working to reconcile all the different needs and the numbers related to the budget. And the budget is where we expect major climate legislation to be this year. This is going to be the vehicle where the biggest climate stuff happens. So that's why we're paying so much attention to it. That's why we're focused on that process, because that's going to be the vehicle for the climate stuff, the biggest climate stuff. And so right now, we're in a period where Senate committees have been given instructions from Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. They were basically given top line numbers for their committees to handle for the budget. And the committees are working on their draft legislation for how to hit those budget numbers. So they're deciding right now what policies to include in the budget. And also this week, you might have seen the House voted on the budget resolution over on their side, which just means they kicked off their own side of the budget process, because we've got the Senate and the House, and they both have to do their stuff. So our representatives in the House are now also working to decide what policies they want to put in the budget. So this is why we did that huge 3-week push to contact the Senate, like end of July into August. And then we did the 3-week push to contact the House, which we're almost done with. It ends the end of the month. So in addition to this being an important time to contact Congress, this is also a really opportune time to generate local media, because our topic, climate change, is being discussed regularly at the highest level of American politics, right? It's the huge component of this budget, and all eyes are on this process from now until it's passed, which will be sometime in the fall. Now, I will note that the timeline is not completely determined. So you know, Congress often takes longer than they plan to reach agreements or to pass things, especially big packages like this that have a high price tag. So this could go well into the fall. But and the only date that our DC staff and other political watchers are fairly confident about is September 15th, which is the date that Majority Leader Schumer asked the committees to submit their draft legislation for the budget. So either on that date or in the few days afterward, the committees should be starting to say, okay, here's our legislative text of what we think we want to do in the budget. Here's how we're going to meet those top line numbers. And so hopefully at that time, we would see a carbon price named among those policies. If we don't, it doesn't mean it's, you know, game over, where CCL will never pack up and go home. But it would get harder after that point, is what we've heard from Danny, our Vice President of Government Affairs. But it could be that we have, it could be that it's stated in those drafts in mid-September. And so rest assured that you will find out as soon as we get the news, one way or the other, and we will provide lots of guidance about what comes next. But again, that moment is still pretty early in the process. As Danny says, that's when the actual reconciliation begins, because then they have to figure out how the package ultimately comes together, and then they'll have to vote on it. They'll have to match it with what happens in the House, and all of that. So there's still a lot to go in the process. But even with the fuzziness around the timing, there's a lot that you can do now on media. So now I'm just going to sort of holler out our top line media opportunities for right now, and then we'll open it up for questions. So the first one is letters to the editor. You and your chapters can be writing about the fact that you want to see your senators and your representatives support a carbon price in the budget. And so I'll drop a link in the chat to our LTE topics resource. Let's see, LTE topics. There you go. So you can reference that resource for guidance about writing a letter on the budget process, the fact that we're contacting the House right now as an organization, and lots of other topics are in there. And as I mentioned, Charlotte is keeping those up to date with the latest news, like extreme weather that's happening in different areas of the country and other things that you can use as hooks for your letters. Another opportunity that we have is op-eds, and we've got a couple templates you can choose from right now. So one is about why a carbon price should be included in the budget. So that's a very timely and useful one to add local details to and submit if you haven't used that one already. And we also have good templates available about the extreme weather that we've been seeing recently. And there's even one about the recent international climate report from the IPCC, which you can submit to your newspapers as well. And of course, you can always write your own op-ed that is super tailored to your area or to messages that you know will really connect with your member of Congress. And then the third thing that you could be working on right now is trying to generate editorial endorsements. And we have editorial packets to support that effort. So if you have ever contacted your editorial board in the past, maybe you've had a meeting, maybe you've just reached out for a meeting, or if your editorial board has already endorsed carbon price or climate action, now is a great time to go back to them with our editorial packet about why a carbon price should be included in the budget, because their opinion would be really valuable right now in this national conversation. And I want to show you, I'll just give a little plug to a good example of an editorial that was published recently. And so if you're not sure exactly what we're going for, check that one out, because that's a wonderful example of the type of thing that we would like newspapers to be publishing, how we want them to be expressing their opinion on carbon pricing. So that's a good example, so you can understand what you're going for.
And Flannery, I just want to mention on that particular editorial, they didn't even have a meeting with the editorial board. Now it took a while, but what they did was they took the editorial packet and they pitched the editor at the paper, just through email, and they sent him that editorial packet, did some follow up over a couple of months, and so forth, and that's how that editorial ended up getting published.
Yeah, that's great, especially in COVID times where meetings are tough to come by, or maybe the editorial board doesn't want to meet virtually or something like that. You can still get a long way from just reaching out, so it never hurts. So those are the main things that I would recommend you think about for media activities right now. But then I will put a little bug in your ear about one potential future opportunity, which is news coverage. So this is one that I would just hang on to until that September 15th date or after, because if the Senate indicates that they are going to include a carbon price in the budget, that will be a fantastic moment to let your local reporters know that you and your chapter have been meeting with your senators about that very policy for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. That would make a fantastic story. And so we will provide you a press release if that's the scenario that we find ourselves in. So that's just something to be thinking about in the coming weeks, if that's.
Yeah.
Hey, George.
No, I got it.
I'm gonna mute him. So with those opportunities in mind, we can open it up now for questions. And I do think we're still a small enough group. We can probably just unmute and ask your questions, or you can raise your hand and we can do it.
Flannery, I noticed that Mark Welsh in the chat asked if we have a list of editorials by conservative papers. That editorial that Flannery just shared the link with, that's up in Marquette, Michigan, and that's in a conservative district, and that editorial was specifically aimed at Republican Congressman Jack Bergman. So I would say that might be a good example right there. Yeah.
Another good one that you might use is here's one from the Houston Chronicle. That is just a larger paper too, and Texas has some Republicans, so that one could be useful. It's specifically calling on Biden to support a carbon tax, but it does show the level that this policy is reaching in terms of where it's being discussed.
Thank you. One follow-up question. We asked a couple weeks ago for a meeting with our editorial staff. A week ago, we were denied, but given the opportunity to write an op-ed.
Nice.
Is it too soon for us to follow up and say, well, even though you didn't want to do this editorial for your paper, here's some others from other conservative papers? Is it too soon for us to badger that? It's almost badgering, I think, at this point, if we did that now.
I would take the opportunity that they've given you to submit an op-ed.
Absolutely, yeah, that's in the works now.
Yeah, so maybe then when they run your op-ed, you can send them a thank you note or something saying, we really appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective here. And by the way, we thought you might be interested to see the perspective of some other papers on this policy we were talking about. Like, here's some examples, and you can just sort of send it as a like an FYI, and it doesn't have to be a really hard ask. Again, it can just be, here's this for you to be aware of, and then you can circle back to them, in a little bit.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Robert, I see your hand up. Oh, hold on, you're muted.
Wait, there. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. not so much a question, but maybe more a bit of guidance. So the normal contact we've had at the LA Times, the energy and enviro editor, he just retired, so they're looking for a replacement. So a bit of sand in the gears, I guess, as far as trying to get a editorial, meeting with the editors, or trying to get a place, get them to write an editorial on this. So should I just be kind of casting around at some of the other editors that are still, that are on staff before they hire the new environmental editor? Or should I mean, it's bad timing, or should we just, sit tight?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the nice thing about the position we're in now is that climate change is not in its own little silo anymore. It's not really being treated as a topic over here that doesn't touch any of the other issues people are thinking about. It is squarely smack in the middle of this political process of the budget. And so I do think that you would have a leg to stand on if you wanted to reach out to other editors and say, hey, clearly one big focus that the Democrats are putting on this budget process is what it's going to do for the climate. And we've been meeting with our senators and representatives about this, a carbon price, but also you could talk about border carbon adjustments, since that's in there. That's already being discussed publicly as part of what could be part of the package. So you could sort of reference that and position yourselves as local experts, really, on this topic, and still try to seek a meeting, even though they're missing the person in that particular editorial position. Another way to go about it would be to wait until they have found that person. And I, don't know how long the process would take, but when they do find that person, that's a good opening to come in and say, hi, I'm part of we're part of an nationwide environmental nonprofit, but we've been working locally and talking to our state's representatives for X number of years. We'd love to catch you up on our work in the community and its implications nationally, and that sort of thing. So you can use their newness as a way to sort of get in there and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I got that game plan already planned out. But it's taking a while now, and it's we're September 15th is coming up pretty fast. So okay, thanks. Those are good suggestions.
Try the other editors for sure.
If I could just add on to that, I would just go straight to the editorial page editor, the opinion editor, and make your pitch with them. Go back over, the editorials that the LA Times has done the last couple of months. I'm sure they've got something there that they've written about climate change, and so kind of use the editorials that they've written about climate change kind of as an entry point for you to start that conversation with the opinion editor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Good points.
Yeah, David.
I like we haven't been, I don't think we've been as ambitious as an editorial board endorsement. We asked the folks if they could, our local newspaper doesn't have many reporters, but it does have a dedicated environmental reporter. And I had coffee with him. It's actually funded by a nonprofit foundation to put an environmental reporter on the paper, McClatchy. So that's good. So I think we should go after that editorial board endorsement. Now, one big question and one littler question. You mentioned September 15th as when the Senate will have their drafts. What about the House? Does the House have a date for a similar work, or is that already done? Or?
It's not already done. I have not seen a specific date for when the House will have draft legislation. The only sort of firm date that I've heard is September 15th. And that's just the Senate side. And again, as Danny has emphasized to us, even that date is still somewhat of a beginning of the official reconciliation process. So,
Hopefully. So the second sort of small question, we have local news items which we've submitted to the NNO and other papers, and papers these days don't publish much. They have a few local articles, and then they have, so I was thinking, I did a little looking around, and there's a site called PR Log, and we can get you can do free press releases from there. You can pay for additional services, but we've sent out press releases occasionally, and they sort of to the newspapers, and they disappear into the void. So what do you guys think about PR Log? I looked one review of free press releases put prlog.org as the top PR site for free press releases. And so we could put a PDF version of our press release on PR Log and then put a link to it, send out a link to it on Twitter or Facebook, stuff like that, social media. And so at least we could get it out there to our membership. You know, some of this stuff is things that have been done by our youth group. And we just want to publish to encourage the youth group. They met with our congressman, and we think he may endorse based partly on meeting with him, with the kids, the young folks. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about PR Log as a free press release distribution service?
So I'm not familiar with it. Did they send out your press release on a wire or something? Like, did they take it from what you said?
We haven't used it. I'm just getting ready to try it. I asked the other members on the media team, and they didn't know anything about this. In a previous life, I had run across this because I was in research, and a lot of press releases that I was interested in were released on science something or other, and they weren't picked up by the news wires because I worked in a sort of a small field, but I could see the press release out of universities and things like that on this science PR thing. That might have been paid, but this prlog.org is free. And all you need is to send out a link, and someone can click on the link and see a nice press release.
Yeah. Well, if your main goal is to, like you're describing, to be able to share sort of longer stories about what your chapter has been working on, or you know, what you've been up to, then it sounds like it certainly can't hurt to put things there and have a live link that you can share with others. But I think the step of still making sure that it gets in front of the reporters that you want to write their stories.
We can send it to the reporters simultaneously.
Yeah, I would recommend still making sure that you take the step to get it in front of the reporters, especially since your paper has a dedicated environmental reporter. A lot of papers don't. So
I had coffee with him, and he's a nice, interesting young guy. So he's interested in getting the stuff, saving the world.
That's great.
And David, don't assume that, you know, just because you send an email to them that they've seen it and they've opened it up and everything. Right. If you don't, you know, get a response within 24, 48 hours or something like that, pick up the phone and give the guy a call and just say, hey, did you get our press release? Yeah.
I got his phone number.
Good.
Okay, Joe Garfunkel, and then Joe Tadino, and then we've got a few more after that. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more point for David and anyone else, that another way to get your press release out there, or other kind of an LTE, you just want to get onto a website with a link, is to use WordPress. And that's what we've done in Houston. And it's pretty effective. You can format it really nicely, and then you can link directly to it from your social media as well.
Yeah, good point, Joe. And I'll just say, if for anybody that is using, any of you that are using something like this, where your press release is going to appear publicly. If you want to make sure that it's really tidy and that it's as strong as it can be, feel free to reach out to Charlotte. And and she's put in the chat. You want to share, Charlotte, about how you've used LinkedIn to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've put press releases on LinkedIn as well before, which has worked quite well, because you can sometimes tells you like 6 journalists looked at your LinkedIn, so it kind of gives you a clue at who's looked. And I also think it's good because it's a business network, so I always think, well, maybe we'll pick up some endorsements or interests as well. So that was kind of my strategy for that.
Awesome. And I'm volunteering you, Charlotte, to help edit anybody's press releases if they are.
Of course, yeah, just email me.
Awesome. Okay, and then Joe Tadino, and then we'll go to Mark and then Barbara. You're muted, Joe.
No, he's.
Oh. Let's see. I think he's on the phone. Okay, we still can't hear you, Joe, but if you type your question in the chat, then we will take it there. Okay, Mark.
Yes, a good way to get media, excuse me, to get media attention, I think, is to have an actual news conference. Sending out a news release is great. It feels good, but if you have a news conference and if you find a good background, like the flooded Missouri River years ago was a good backdrop for a news conference, or your state house, or the near your House member or Senate member's office, where you can talk about, we're talking to this person on a regular basis, to make it easier for the media to take pictures of you. The TV cameras really like it better than just getting a news release, because they can't do any sound with or pictures with the news release. And it makes your job easier too. If you get 2 or 3 or 4 TV cameras and the newspaper to all show up at one time, well, you've done a lot better work than trying to get 1 or 2 to get together with you individually.
Yeah, so this raises a very good question of the difference of pitching a broadcast outlet or a radio outlet versus a print newspaper, because a print reporter just needs the written quotes. They can talk to you on the phone, or they could get an email from you, or they could pull quotes just from your press release and they can have what they need. But if it's the nightly news, if it's your local NPR station, they're going to want different assets so that they can put together their stories. And so if you are sending press release or trying to plan an event for press that is visual or has audio components, you definitely do want to think about, who are your spokespeople going to be? Are they ready to give some sort of tight, quick sound bites? What photos do you have to share? Maybe from, even if you don't have a good visual in the moment, if you have photos that you can share of folks from your chapter on Capitol Hill from past lobby days, things like that, all of that can be useful to support a story. And Mark, I would just say on the idea of hosting a press conference, that you're right, that it definitely will it helps focus their attention if there's an event. But it also helps to have something really grabby that is the reason for the event. And sometimes that can be hard to come by, but let me tell you, if the Senate says they're going to put a carbon price in this budget, that's your moment, if there ever is one, to say local advocates who have been lobbying for a carbon price for X number of years, celebrate the inclusion of the policy in the budget or whatever, and then invite all your press contacts and have them come all talk to you at once. So that's there could be a moment this fall for sure.
And Flannery, do we have any B-roll of CCL volunteers lobbying on Capitol Hill that they might be able to offer to a TV station or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we do not have on community any B-roll that's set aside. And when Steve says B-roll, he means like sort of background footage of like people walking around and, you know, crowds milling and people going in and coming in and out of offices and things like that. So not like an interview, but just that sort of background footage. So we don't have any B-roll set aside, but we do have these videos that you could share those with a TV station and say, this is the type of footage that we have available. And then if you get a bite from them, if they want to do a story and they want that kind of footage, then reach out to Charlotte and we can work with our marketing team to get you the B-roll that you need, because we do have it. It's just that we haven't packaged it up quite yet and gotten it on CCL Community, but it does exist. So you could start with those videos that are out there and then let us know if you need more. Okay, Barbara.
Hi there. Hi. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm in Wisconsin, in central Wisconsin, and I was asked to be on, I work with CCL for years, but I was asked to be at this meeting because we have a radio station that usually, they always, every day you hear Citizens Climate Lobby updates, and it must come from the community, but they said he wanted some new stuff. So where does a radio station, I like this video link, I'm guessing it's probably in the same area. Are there some audio links that can be put onto the radio that are updating people with something new?
Yeah, good question. So the best thing to do would be to record someone from your chapter and be able to send that as a soundbite. So if you are reaching out and you have a press release that has some quotes in it, or what you want to share from your perspective from your chapter, you could write that out and you could record a little audio file and then send that along with your written press release and just say, here's a clip of so-and-so from our chapter.
But we'd like to have, we have something very professional. It sounds like it comes from, not somebody in Wapaka. So, it's, are there some already on the website that are made by professional people that sound a little bit better than just us? Because we're always on the radio. It's a local radio, 6,000 people. We all know each other.
So, well, no, then we don't have anything
okay.
like that already, because often what happens is that in the local media markets, what outlets are looking for is the local voices and community perspective and that sort of thing. And so we don't often get. This is the first time I've gotten this.
There's like music in the background, and I don't know where exactly he got it from, but I can find out. And I like your links and everything. So one more question is, and I'll look into that because I understand what you're saying. So the other question is the links of the editorials. Can they be put on our local Facebook CCL page as long as we give credit to where it comes from and everything?
Absolutely, yeah. And you can share any example of published media that you think will help advance the conversation in your local community or with the folks that follow your social media pages. Feel free to share that, and you don't even have to worry about giving credit because you're sending
already in there.
Yeah, you're sending traffic to their site, so that's you're being helpful already by sharing it.
And I see Joe Garfunkel wrote Citizens Climate Radio. What does that mean?
That's a podcast that Peterson, contractor with CCL, makes. Is this what you're describing?
Perhaps.
Okay.
It's short bites, but maybe it comes from there.
Maybe. Well, send me an example of what you're thinking about, and we will explore it more.
Okay.
Okay, and then Joe, who
I think I've solved my mute problem. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you. You want to read your question out?
Good. No, you could read it and then I'll just elaborate.
No, go for it. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. We've got this editorial or article, letter, I'm not sure which one to call it, that was written by 30 top economists in the Chicago area, Northwestern, University of Chicago, et cetera. It was written, I think, before there was a strategy for how to actually get it published. So once it got finalized, you know, a couple of us sent it out to the Chicago Trib and the Sun-Times initially, and they passed. I talked to the editor at the Sun-Times, and he said, well, you know, the lead is buried. And, you know, he's right. I mean, it comes out in favor of a carbon fee and dividend, but it cites third parties throughout most of it, you know, sets up what the need is, and then at the end says, you know, we support putting a carbon fee on emissions. So, and we can't rewrite it. So we've gone through a couple of these steps and are trying to figure out now, how do we actually get this thing published, either as an op-ed or editorial coverage of something that I think should have some news value.
Interesting. So the editor he spoke to you about it, but said that it's just the lead is buried, and that, but was he otherwise interested, or do you think that?
Yeah, otherwise interested, you know. So then we went back to the team. It's like, well, can we rewrite this, you know, to make it more palatable? And the answer was, well, then we'd have to go back to all 30 of these economists who've signed it. And, you know, it opens up a big can of worms. I mean, I don't think it's feasible, you know, either time-wise or even practical. So
well,
we're kind of at an impasse.
I mean, just hearing
Interesting, right?
Well, hearing you describe it, if the lead is buried, it's still in there somewhere. Like if the last paragraph says we support putting a price on carbon, you know, if that's in there, my first instinct would be to say, why don't you just move that up top and then email the 30 economists all together and say, in order for this to be published with the such and such paper, the editor has suggested a slight rearranging of the content. So we just wanted to update you that we've moved this paragraph to the top. And if you have any problems with that, please let us know. Otherwise, it will run as such. And then there you go. Like you're saying the same stuff. The information is the same.
Love that idea. It's a fantastic idea. I guess the second part of my question was, are there any examples from around the country where chapters have gotten similar types of articles or letters or advocacy pieces written by economists and have gotten coverage of that in one way or another that people are aware of? Because if so, I'd like to see it.
Sure. I'm going to jump in because yes, there are examples. And this is funny you bring this up because this is something I've been thinking about, trying to come up with a strategy so every state can do this, because we've seen about 5 states now have success with this. And definitely I know that North Carolina have done this, and they kind of wrote it like a news story, and they thought very hard about how to package it. So I would love to kind of get back to you on that and perhaps work with you to work out how we can repackage it. And I agree with Flannery. I think if you do the hard work and then you just email it to them all and get them to sign off on it, then who's going to be offended by that? Ultimately, they did it because they want to do it. So the end goal is to get it published. So I would love to kind of circle back to you on that, and we can work out what the best wording is. And this is part of my ongoing project to maybe eventually push this out to all states, that they can go through this process and try and do this economist statement, because it does seem to be working all around the country.
We can be your next guinea pig here in Illinois. That's great.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it in South Carolina too, so I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I'll put my email into the chat for you.
Great.
And we can talk maybe next week. Great, thank you.
And I'll just add really quick, I'll put in the chat, these are the states that we know have successfully published their own economist statement. And I can share with you, I have easily to hand that's the link for the one that just ran in Colorado. That's the most recent one that they published in the Denver Post. So, but there are examples from those other states. And I see Joe saying in the chat that they're working on one in Texas too. So yeah, this is rippling out. That's awesome.
Excellent. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Sure. Barbara, I see your hand. Oh, there we go. You're unmuted now.
I just never lowered it. Sorry.
Oh, all right. Any other questions? If we're out of questions, we can shift to you guys just telling us what's going on with media in your chapter and bragging on yourselves. Yeah, Joe?
Sorry to brag. I do have one. Last week, one of our CCL Houston volunteers had an excellent interview on a radio station. It's KPFT, local radio in Houston. So we got the recording for that. I did some editing to trim it, the beginning and end, and then we posted that out on our social media. So that was really good, I thought.
That's fantastic. What was the focus of the interview?
It was primarily in regard to the IPCC report that had just been released the prior week, and that was really the main focus. Talking about that, talking about climate change in general, and then other kinds of renewable energy topics.
That's great. A tiny little plug in case you guys haven't done this already. When you get awesome media like that, or really anything published or anything in the media space, it's great to connect with your liaison. So whether that's the liaison to your representative or whoever works with your senators, but give that stuff to that volunteer so that if they need an excuse to reach out to their office, to the office again and warm that relationship up, or if it's something that could help them in a meeting they have coming up, make sure that you're sending the meeting or the media to the liaison so that they can funnel that right to your members of Congress too. But that's great. Congratulations on the radio hit. That's big.
And in that regard, on kind of getting the media to the congressional offices, every member of Congress is on Twitter. So I really encourage you, if you get an op-ed, a letter, or an editorial published, post it on Twitter and tag your representative and your senators, and have people in your group who are on Twitter retweet it, comment on it, quote tweet it, all that stuff. The more times that it's shared, the more likely that the staffer who's in that congressional office is going to say, holy crap, I need to tell my boss about this.
Absolutely. Carl?
Yeah, well, just to follow on to that whole conversation, by the way, Joe, congrats. And Steve, yes, exactly that. So now I know why I'm in the meeting, is because Paula is too modest to brag about her work. She got an op-ed published in several local newspapers, including quotes from our two senators here in California. And Senator Padilla himself tweeted out a link to that op-ed. I see Steve shaking his head. You guys are familiar. And so there's so many great things about that, just raising awareness, of course. But it's particularly interesting because the quote that Paula found that she knew was out there on Twitter somewhere from soon after Padilla got sworn in, he reused that exact same text that he had tweeted out in February in his tweet that included the link to the op-ed. He only added the words "simply put" hyphen, and then the rest of it was literally word for word. And so among the many things that I'm taking away from this is, and then within the CCL community, it was like, hey, check this out. Another senator is supporting carbon pricing. Well, he actually supported it back in February, but and so what I'm realizing is, just to raise awareness internally when we see things like Steve's saying, tweet it, retweet it, get your friends to quote tweet it, etc. I think there's a lot of value because the volunteers get pumped up when they see this stuff, right? And so I just think that in addition to the overall objective of raising awareness kind of out there, I also think there's in here into our wonderful community that there's so much benefit when we can get that kind of buzz going. And I really noticed that. It's like, whoa, there's like, 30, 40, 50 people shared it on Facebook after, I don't know which one of you posted it on Facebook. Thank you for doing that. And same thing on Twitter, a lot of action. So even when you think like, well, this isn't actually news because he tweeted that back in February. Well, it's news in the sense that we're raising awareness at this critical moment in time.
Yeah, that is too cool. That whole story is fantastic. Great job, Paula. Great job sharing it, unearthing that quote. And that's the coolest thing, that he himself shared it. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time. That's really awesome.
Well, thank you. And if I could just weigh in, I mean, I used your template. It was fantastic. The one about weather, all the bad weather conditions and fires and all that stuff, and just changed it up and made it local. And in my team, what we do is if we get published, we send messages directly to our members of Congress to let them know that we got published. So I did that pretty soon after the publication, the third publication, which was, I kind of waited. And once it got published in 3 of our local papers, then I sent a message to Feinstein and Padilla's offices, the senators, to let them know about all 3 publications. And it was about an hour after I sent that message to Padilla's office that he tweeted that tweet. So I don't know if it was just coincidence or if staff members got that message and told him right away, and then he tweeted the thing. So I don't know that much about Twitter, but it was pretty exciting to see that. So thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it really does show the power of not just getting the media published, but then making sure that it gets right in front of the member of Congress. And so that's fantastic.
Quick question. Paula said she got this published in 3 local newspapers. I figured that would never happen, so I haven't tried to submit to more than 1, but I guess it does. So I'm new at this.
Yeah, Paula, are those papers, do they have a formal relationship? Are they related?
Yes, 2 of them are sister papers. So then the third one is just our local little Los Altos paper here. And I have since learned, so a little warning to everybody, that I've gotten information from the editor of the Mountain View Voice, which is the sister paper. So the 2 papers that are sister papers, that assistant editor contacted me and said that she was actually disappointed to find out that this op-ed had been published other places in the country, because somehow, I don't know how she figured that out. She Googled the title or whatever. And so now I know, and there was nothing in their website indicating that you were not supposed to submit an op-ed that had also been submitted other places. So after the fact, now I know that we can't do that with those papers anymore. And we'll just have to individually submit to 1 paper at a time.
Yeah, so I'll just say there, you didn't do anything wrong, Paula, by submitting. They, it's, if the paper has a rule that they are not going to publish on their website, and then they're not going to do their due diligence to ask submitters, is this exclusive to our paper, or has it been submitted elsewhere, then that's a little bit on them. But that said, there are some papers who prefer for their submissions to be exclusive. They only want pieces that are for them and that haven't run elsewhere. And even though our pieces are all unique in that they have specific local information in them, they have a specific local co-author alongside Mark Reynolds. Sometimes even that is, there are certain papers that don't like that approach. And so Charlotte, do you want to talk about what we've added now on the template to make sure papers are aware?
Sure. Yeah. So what we decided to do is just add a little paragraph at the bottom of the templates, and it basically is just a disclosure. It says that CCL volunteers may be sending this to other publications around the country, but you're kind of guaranteed that the co-author who sent this in has added their own unique and local perspectives. So that, I think once we have that on there, and I've added that to actually all the op-ed templates today. So if you download any now, they all have it. And that really is our disclaimer. And I deliberately put it at the bottom because then they can read all the amazing local insight. But then when they get to the bottom, they understand that there may be versions that are slightly different in other papers. So that should hopefully get rid of that problem of that Paula had of someone coming back to her and not being very happy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and just to add to that quickly, sorry to interrupt, Flannery, but I knew that our larger papers around here, the San Jose Mercury News or the Mercury News and San Francisco Chronicle, I knew that they were opposed to that, and we've never tried sending an op-ed template to any of them, the larger papers, but the smaller ones, I mean, I got published with an op-ed in those same 3 papers for Earth Day, one of your templates for Earth Day, just this last Earth Day. And so I thought, okay, that worked. I'll do it again. And this time that's when she called it out. So, but thank you, Charlotte, for adding that disclaimer. I think that's a really good idea.
No problem at all.
All right. And David, did you have another question, or is your hand still up from before? Okay.
Nope, my hand was still up. Sorry.
No problem. I just want to make sure we're not missing stuff. All right. Any other last brags here in our last few minutes? Yeah, Don? Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Flannery, thank you. And thank you everyone for your contributions. I'm in Western Washington. So we have basically 2 regions of Washington state. West of the Cascade Mountains, it's urban, Seattle, Tacoma, Bellingham, and that's where much of the population is concentrated. When you go east of the mountains, much of that is rural, widely dispersed, agricultural. So you actually have almost 2 sets of differing views, conservatives and liberals. And if we publish something or want to publish something as a letter to the editor or an op-ed or even a news conference, do you see better mileage by educating constituents who can then write to their policymakers, or focusing on the policymakers, but putting it in language that the general public can understand? Because how many people on the street can tell you what a greenhouse gas is? How many can tell you basics about the budget process? I mean, something that is really at the elementary level and why it's critical for us. Or how many can tell you about what is the IPCC? It's basic to us because we're in that environment. But for the general man or woman on the street, they're worried about feeding kids, commuting, and getting off to school, whatever. So there's a great portion of the public that needs to be educated, just basically. And if you get them to understand what is affecting them or what can affect them, then maybe they can be motivated to write policymakers. Or do we take the perspective, let's publicly tell these policymakers that this is what we think needs to happen, but the general public is scratching their heads. They may not even be looking at the editorial page. Many of them just go straight to the sports or whatever interests them.
Yeah.
So your perspective, please.
That's a great question. I am in the camp of the second option. I think with media, all our media efforts locally, our primary audience is our members of Congress. That is always who we are really trying to communicate with. The secondary audience is the general public. So it's great when they are reading this perspective and more people are learning that, oh, there are other people who care about climate change. Maybe I should get involved. And that's wonderful. But in my mind, that's gravy on top of having published something that the member of Congress is going to see in their area that they represent and think, oh, this is something that I should take more seriously. I'm seeing this pop up more and more. I need to get active on this topic. So that's that's my short answer. And I think if there are areas where there's really a deep need for public education, then I think that's the arm of the chapter where grassroots outreach can happen, right? Community presentations and getting connected with the network there in the community and building relationships and all of that. So that's one of the other levers of political will that is important to pull, for sure.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're at the bottom of the hour. Sadly, our time together is coming to a close. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you for giving Charlotte a warm welcome. And so future calls will be led by Charlotte. She'll be here to help you and provide support. And of course, Steve and I are still available, but Charlotte will be your frontline contact here with volunteer media efforts. So thank you all so much. And we'll put this recording up on CCL community so that you can share it with anybody else in your chapters or in your states who might want to hear the discussion or meet Charlotte. And yeah, so thank you for everything you're doing and everything that you will do.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thanks for hosting. Nice to meet you.
Nice talking to you.
Bye.
All right.